Hey guys, how's it going? It is 8:56 p.m. on December 2nd. Holy crap. Yeah, it is December. December 2nd, 2018. So tonight, as you can tell, it's a Sunday, but I'm kind of upbeat. It's kind of weird. I was waiting for some emails tonight just to see if Scott wanted to do something. I wasn't too sure, but let me just take a quick look at my emails here for a second, see if there was any others. I don't think there was. No. Okay. Whoops. Yeah, that's all for that. Okay, so yeah, I was seeing what was happening because I know tomorrow night I've indicated that I will be available at least to dispatch on the Southwest server. Now, one of the things, and I've gone through this before, I know I'm not going to reiterate everything, but just the real thing is getting motivated to do something, or getting motivated to actually. I have enough motivation to start a live stream. That part is good. At least I'm putting myself out there. I'm putting how I feel. Whether or not people like my opinion or not, whether people support me, whether I'm an advocate, whether I'm a loudmouth, whatever people think, that's fine. I'm cool with that. But I've been saying for some time that there are people out here, perhaps like Scott and others, who do share the same opinion as me. I still get, a fair amount of views. I'm still getting new subscribers. I'm not too sure how that's happening, but it is. I definitely have a lot of videos in the past. The most popular videos are the ones where I'm in Run8, not so much the vlogs. But this one I'm going to go into Run8 very shortly, and I'll explain as I'm going in what I'm looking for. I've done a similar video to this before where I was searching various things, but what I'm looking for is actually pretty simple. And it starts with me. And anybody who's really looking into Run8, if you haven't done so already, has to consider this, I suppose, or at least think about what's important to you. Is physics important to you? Is having organized sessions, signals, some type of movement important to you? Is multiplayer important to you? There's all kinds of questions to be asked. Now, I've been on the record saying that Run8, for me personally, is the best train simulator on the planet. I have also been on the record to say Freight Yard Manager or Yard Duty is the best railroad simulator on the planet. You notice none of those other ones, like Train Sim World, Trains, or any of the other ones that are out there, make that. As far as I'm concerned, they don't even compete to those. There's nothing other than Freight Yard Manager, Yard Duty to me that does what it does. And there's, with the exception, I suppose, of RTS, although at a very small level, RTS is a utility for Run8 for the most part. At least at this point. And other than that, I have plans. That's all I have. And Run8 is Run8. And where it goes, I don't know. We'll see. It may not go any further, and because of that, I've got to ask, you're at that level now. It's just like, okay, well, what have I said? So it's 9 p.m. right now. I've said at this point, I'm at least committed to exploring the TD3 side and trying to start there. The reason why I want to start there is because I know it's something that I can do. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm urgently need it. I certainly don't, because I do have enough activity in the week and enough of a virtual train fix that I don't have to worry about it. But there's certainly room, or there's still room, even though I got a lot done this weekend with my son. Actually, my son was very helpful. I was very pleased, and he was very offering. He's a real good kid, and he He says he doesn't mind doing that because I do things for him. You know, I kind of said, well, you know, that I try to do things for him. He says, no, you do things for me. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool for a 10-year-old. So he's very appreciative. It's amazing what I expected as a kid back then at his age. Was a lot higher expectations in many ways, but then again, there's some things that he's got that I never got the opportunity to have. So maybe more important things. I had a lot of distractions, but yeah, and he's got distractions too. Don't get me wrong. But anyways, let's go into Run8 for a second if I can find it. Of course, my icon I've never updated because for whatever reason I lost it when it went goofy. So Scott and I were sending emails back and forth. He has a project that he's working on. He's actually tried to get people onto a server, and to be honest, he couldn't even get me onto the server. And that was, and I've been very, very frank with it, and it's just like, if there's really nothing happening, I mean, he has an adopt an industry program or something. And I understand what that's all about. You basically taking control of an industry. Well, that's just like a tycoon, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not interested in being a tycoon. So, for me, I did mention in an email the other night, no, I'm not interested in that. But he's putting that out there because he doesn't want to be. He's more interested in seeing what other people creatively can bring and bringing it, and he will host it. So that's cool. I don't want to create a lot myself, to be quite honest. I've done enough creation, but I'm willing to create again under the right circumstances, and I may be considering creating once again. I've tried a few things, and it was I don't like, I've tried one where I have to make sure I can run it myself. Well, I've tried a few things. I've tried one where I just put it out there and wait and see what happens. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, you know, it's disappointing. Sometimes it's frustrating. Sometimes it's very encouraging. As far as me putting up a server, the chances of that happening are slim to none, especially that I will be moving on February, as of February 1st, I'll be moving, and I will likely be connected to Wi-Fi, as far as I know. I'm not too pleased about that, but at the same time, I don't have to pay for it, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to live with it. Hopefully, my connection is going to be strong enough to at least continue to be part of the multiplayer community. If that doesn't happen, then, well, then things change, but that's okay. But for now, I would much rather be a client. I'm still part of the Southwest forums. I'll be on tomorrow night, as I said. Now, going into the Southwest, I'm just going to go into Explore Board. We'll go right at Barstow for a moment. We'll start there. California is absolutely huge at this point. And some of the things that I like to do. I certainly love to dispatch, although I have been frustrated as of like recent weeks just because of the amount of work that I'm doing and lack of anything else. It's okay, it's manageable, but when you have a stressful day and then you come and then you're just dealing with stress, it's not necessarily the best thing. I used to hang out here a lot, and if you can see some of my older videos, what I would do is I would set up traffic, and then I would go back to this screen and watch the trains go by. And then I'd go back to the, sometimes I'd have to go to the dispatch display and monitor things, even very recently. set up a few triggers and get them going, and make sure everything's running okay. Lately, I've found that for whatever reason, it's been very, very busy, and it's not just a little bit here and a little bit there. It's just been crazy. The amount of traffic that's flown in. Now, I don't know if the numbers have increased or it's just just a random number generator thingy that's doing it. I really don't know. But the last session I had, I think I maxed around 36 trains, which is kind of above my comfort zone. I don't mind doing it once in a while, but if it continues that way, it's something that I'll probably get burnt out with eventually, which is why I'm encouraging others to give it a try. I've done that over on the Southwest server. I've said, hey, I'll do it, but I would like to see others actually try it. And I'm sure they can do it. It's not a question of skill or anything. It's not a matter of skill. If it was my job or whatever, and it's busy and that's just the way it is. Problem is, we're actually tackling multiple territories, and in reality, no dispatcher would be handling that much territory that I am doing on a regular basis, and what other dispatchers are doing as well. Because you got to understand that while all those meets are happening, those AI trains would actually be trying to communicate, especially the ones that are stuck at red signals. There would be tones going off all over the damn place. Not so much like the TD3, but there would be a lot going on. So I'm going to start here in Barstow first and take a look. Barstow is first of all, let me explain why I'm going through these various routes once again. I've done this before. Barstow, when humping here, you have the ability to over at the hump ability. Now, things have changed with the hump. I've noticed you have to run it a little bit slower. At least that seems to work for me. It tends to have mishumps a little bit more. I'm not too sure if that has anything to do with drops in frame rates or just resources or too much stuff in the background or what's happening, but I noticed that mishumps do happen more often. There's hump failures, and basically the hump will shut down, cars will start rolling, and then the good thing about Barstow, as well as the hump at West Colton, is you can at least go in. I prefer, if I like one hump over anything, I prefer the hump at Barstow over West Colton, only because it's really, you're not focusing too much. It's pretty easy to just get it going and then set the speed control and pay attention. Make sure you're not overfilling tracks, but it's relatively easy to hump. What you cannot do in California is try to dispatch and hump at the same time. There's just way too much territory, and I'm not even into all the territory. It is now, if you model a certain portion, that's okay too, but here's the thing, and I've said this before. When you start off with this section, yeah, you're going to have trains. Nope, the wrong section. If you start off and if you're just doing the basic Mojave sub, you got spawns taking place at Seiko, and you have spawns taking place right around here, I believe, at Bakersfield. They will head off, and I believe, I'm not 100% certain. I'm not. I don't want to go into the various controls because I got a funny feeling I'm gonna end up showing my passwords if I forget what key it is. But anyways, the spawn points, I believe the closest one is where is it? I believe the closest spawn point is Yermo. I don't think there's spawn points in Bakersfield, or Barstow, I should say. I don't recall there being one. Now, that doesn't mean you can't spawn a train. It's just the spawn points that are available by the system that's set up. Basically, I've never liked too much. The only other way of going around that is to, if you go this way and you start running stuff through here, you could spawn at Highland. I would prefer Highland over Vincent. Vincent, I was trying to do that with my Mojave project, or whatever the hell it was called. It was cutting off trains quite a bit because it's only 6,200 feet. The best one to spawn at is Highland. The problem with that is you lose. Well, it's not necessarily a problem, but you're not getting through with West Colton. Or sorry, West Colton. You're not going through Barstow. Now, if you were to do West Colton, there's another way of looking at this here. I'm just trying to think as far as which ways you could do that. Needles is Needles. I mean, there's not much. I mean, Seligman. Now, first of all, let me explain why I'm looking for humps in particular. The reason why I'm particularly looking at humps is I don't mind humping a train. I find it's a relaxing experience, and in the right circumstance, you can you can, but that's the problem now, is you got to be very careful when you're multitasking, because that can cause problems. External dispatcher, running external dispatcher is probably problematic because it's extra stuff. Any extra stuff, you're risking mishumps. So California is probably not the best place to actually do a hump operation while you're trying to dispatch. West Colton, you have without the LA embedded, you do have spawns. I believe there's spawns right over here still that are available. Basically, what happens is they put spawns at the ends of the tracks. There's spawns for the Yuma sub as well. There's a lot of ways that you can work West Colton, actually. West Colton, if you want to, you in theory, I'm just trying to think now how the best way to do that. See, here's the logic behind it. What happens is they don't give you a southbound spawn location. As far as I know, I don't remember seeing one. The only locations that you can spawn from are off of the Yuma sub. You can spawn off the Yuma, and you can spawn up somewhere in here if you're not running LA. So in theory, you could, if you're looking to dispatch and hump, you could. This is a tough one to hump, though. You got to pay attention to what the hell you're doing too. So if you're going to interact with this, you don't want to interact very much, because you have to really watch your speed on this. I don't know if I explained why. As far I said, I like the part about humping. I like dispatching. I like humping. I'm not too big on just running trains anymore and being dispatched, unless somebody's dispatching me. If somebody's dispatching me, it's not too bad. Although I find, I want somebody who is actually paying attention to what they're doing in dispatching. I don't want to just be, given green lights all the way down double track. I mean, that's boring as you know what. Just seeing trains coming at me is boring. I want to be, if I'm a slow train, I want to be overtaken by a faster train. If I'm a passenger train, I want to be able to overtake other traffic, etc. So there's a lot of situations. If I'm running a train, I want to be in a realistic situation. So I want somebody who's rather proficient at dispatching. California is one of the densest corridors for dispatching, although even parts, if you go into the Mojave sub, it's not too bad. It's a little less dense in comparison, but you can still have lots of meets and interesting things going on. The problem is since they included needles with Mojave, basically what they're assuming with their logic is, oh yeah, you're going to run a train all the way from Needles, or you're going to run a train all the way from here in Barstow. You're going to work, and you're going to work every train, and you're going to have, I guess, where's the spawn point with Barstow? There's another one here. I just realized that. Okay, I gotta think about this for a second. Hang on a second. Okay, good. I got the right one. I was afraid I wasn't going to. Spawn points. Okay. I just want to see which ones there are. So it's Shift F2. Okay. So you got your Needles, Riverside, Lenwood. Just want to take a look at something here. I don't think there is a spawn point for that. Oh, there is a Lenwood. My mistake. You know, I never thought of that. Hang on a second here. I want to see this. I know there's not a spawn point, but let me just spawn a Airtable train for a minute and see where it's popping it. Well, isn't that okay, that's a little interesting. So this is a little bit of something I never thought of. When I was doing the Mojave project, I totally forgot that there was a spawn point here, because I was thinking, well, the reason why there's a spawn point here is for those that don't have the Cajon sub, they get to spawn something. But so in reality, I could have always set this up. I never thought of that. I don't know why I never thought of that. But basically, what you can do there is you can spawn a train out of... If you were going to do BNSF only, which is a possibility, there's a lot of ways you can do this. Yeah, I know. Like I said before, running the hump and dispatching at the same time, it's going to be very difficult to do. And then to be able to, so I just basically spawn whatever train this is. So so that's a possibility. I never really thought of that. So that's cool. Now, of course, the problem with that is, how do you get a train to delete itself? Which is an interesting question. Here, let me get the lights going here. Well, it don't matter, but because if you have Cajon sub, which I do have, it's just going to keep going down to Cajon, which is fine. Some of you are thinking, like, what the hell is he trying to do? Maybe I'm trying not to... Let me see a Cajon for a minute. There was a place where I ran the trains off the track, and I can't remember where I ran them off. But it was on the UP side. It's around Highland, I think, and I can't remember where I deleted them. There was a place where I would delete them. So I basically ran this screen. So what will happen is they would come out of they'd come around Hinckley, and then I was able to at least control this. So this is where this train is headed. He's coming out of the Barstow map. But in theory, you could run a train. I imagine there's some place around here. I could take a look at the maps, I suppose, but so this is just exploring different ways that you can run single player or with a friend. The with a friend is the one I'm considering. Doing it by myself is boring as hell for me. I know a lot of people like single player. I'm not trying to say, no, you can't do single player. Anybody can do single player if that's what they want to do. But even those that I know that have done single player for a long time get bored of, at least the ones that are kind of like-minded, like myself, would do it. Now, see, here's a spot that you can run a train down. So you just throw the switch here. Let me try that for a second. Let me just try that and see what he does. I'll set this up. I'll try to set it up if I'm quick enough. Let's see if I'm quick enough. So this is like assuming, what do we have it here? To the facilities here. Well, that would come out that way, which kind of screws up that idea. But, yeah. Bad example there because I can't get a train to come that way right now. Alright, so he's coming. Let me see if I'm overlooking something. No, he's going to go around the Y. So, anyways, that ain't going to work. So, I'll just delete that for now. You can always manually delete them as well. So, that's, in a nutshell, California. So you could run just this, which isn't too bad. Like I said before, I like dispatching. So if I was to set things up, what I could do is, if I like to dispatch and I want to run trains on especially one screen just like that. Let me take a look at the Mojave map for a second. Now that I have that in there, that's kind of interesting to me, because now I'm looking at this and saying, because there's a few industries in here. I was running, the last project I tried, I ran out of Mojave. And like I said before, I mean, in order to do it, I had to, at the very least, I had to be able to run it myself. That was the only way. And everything I had was set up as a backup so that if I didn't have enough people, I could run it. That's not the way I want to approach things now. Just give me a second here. I'm just going to grab a drink and a snack, because this is going to be a little bit here. But, so what I'm doing is I'm just brainstorming some ideas that I may have thought of in the past, but at a different perspective. From the single player perspective, if you like dispatching, this is a very simple way of doing it, because you can actually set up this particular section doesn't require any add-on routes. So if you're just getting into Run8, you can get this. You have spawn points. You have spawn points here. You have spawn points here. All you have to do is basically dispatch this area, which is actually it's a little bit more than one territory, but it's not too bad. You know, it's doable. It actually makes up. It's not a full territory on one side. Channel 14, for example. Yeah, sorry, not the start. Yeah, I'll get it right. I guess the tones are a little different than I thought. Just looking at it here. So we got 54, which is the BNSF channel. Or Star 54, I should say. I had a post and I think I got my information wrong or something. Okay. So here's star 13 is BNSF. Then you switch over to UP. You're on star 54. So yeah. And this is totally different than what I was saying in one of my posts. My post was kind of getting the wrong numbers, but so basically, what these stars are, these are the districts, the channel, and the tone. So what one dispatch desk is. You really have a conglomerate of a bunch. Like the star 54 handles all of the UP Mojave sub, whereas 13 handles the BNSF Mojave sub, which includes the where does it start here? Let me get this right. Sorry. 54. So star 54 is UP. Star 13 is BNSF. So if you were to simulate a BNSF dispatcher, really you're joining in on something else here, so it doesn't matter. You've got to take the role of both UP and BNSF. Which means you would also have to have a spawn point for UP trains to bring them into play. You don't have to model, obviously modeling Vincent. The problem, like I said before, if you're trying to spawn trains from Vincent, you got to be careful what you're spawning. And because you can't set limits and set particulars, you have a chance, likely, if you're using the systems involved in the car forwarding systems, if you're using the systems that come with Run8, not the RTS stuff, but RTS is not compatible with version 2 anyways, you won't be able to spawn. So what you're stuck with doing in that case is you're stuck spawning at Highland. You would have to do the entire, well, not the entire, but a big portion of star 54, but you're not doing the entire star 54, because if you look at Cajon sub, I'll show you. See, that continues until you get over here when you're on to 50. So you don't have to, you lose this part, you don't have to worry about that part because you're stopping everything at Highland. In other words, you're now dealing with a little bit of UP and a little bit of BNSF, which kind of gives you the workload that one would expect in one desk. So if you're looking to dispatch realistic trains, you can set up all 100% prototypical trains and you'd be fine. The problem with that is you're just dispatching. So one person, I mean, you can do it, and in theory you can even run. In the one in particular that you can do is you can run a train going up the grade quite easily. Going down is a little bit more tougher because you got to pay attention to, at the very least, if you got a rail driver, you can see the speed, so it's not too bad. And you're not always looking. A dispatcher is not always looking at the screen. That's something that I have personally been frustrated with for a little while now. It's got nothing to do with the Southwest guys. It just has to do with, you know, it was kind of weird because I knew when you're limited on people, number one, I don't like rocking the boat. Number two, I've got to try things for a while and see, okay, how does it feel? Does it feel realistic to me? Does it feel like it's good? I've always been the one, actually, with those guys. I've always said you should have 100% of the trains. And they were the ones, Mike was suggesting, you know, he wanted to go down to 90% because of wanting to extend the territory to as much as possible. the problem with extending the territory as much as possible is you need more people dispatching. So he brought it up to 3 dispatchers, which relieves some of that stress. Even at 90% train levels, though, we're dispatching way too much. I can't get off the dispatch screen. That to me is not realistic dispatching. I should be able to. I mean, yeah, okay. I'm not talking with all the crews. I'm not filling out paperwork. I'm not doing a lot of the other things a dispatcher would be doing, like talking, looking at a screen to see what the next trains are that are coming, and trying to put them into the plan. So there's a lot of things. I'm sure there's other duties there, but this is a territory that's doable if you want to be a dispatcher. Now, the thing that I was trying to get with my son, and he just didn't buy into it. I told him, I said, I says, if you're that interested, I can, at the very least, only if you're interested, I can get a second copy of Run8, and we can go ahead and because I don't have a copy on the old server. I just have the copy on my client computer. I never bought 2 copies of version 2. So I've run my server off the client machine. I've done the whole thing from here, basically. So I tried to talk to him about it. I says, I could dispatch and you can run. This was something that him and we talked back and forth, but he never bought into it. He wasn't interested. It's hard enough to get him to do. I can't even get him to do subsistence. And right now his computer's blocked. I've got stuff in the way for the move coming up in February. So, but what happened was Scott and I have been having conversations, and we've been talking about doing this for a while. So it's a possibility that we might be able to try a few ideas on our own. He's had a server. I haven't been interested in it. Just as a server with whatever you can do or whatever you want to do, it just didn't appeal to me. I'm all open for more. The more the merrier. I like that, but I want things to be realistic. Now, even the Southwest has been talking about reducing locals and a few other things, so they know that it's getting stressful. I guess I don't know. I guess it's one of those things where I'm saying, hey, I'll keep on dispatching, but I know that what I'm feeling. I felt this before, and I'm like, but yet on one side, I'm looking at it and saying, okay, well, I get my Run8 fix on Mondays and Wednesdays, but if I somehow have to give it up again, what am I going to do to replace it? And I'm not the only one that feels this way. Again, it's got nothing to do with the Southwest guys. The Southwest guys, I think, are the most prototypical guys that are running right now. As best as they can do it. They had 9 guys on the other night, and I think that's great. And they run locals during the week and whatever. I don't run the locals anymore. I don't even run the humps. Even though I like running the humps, I don't do it. And it's not because it's not because I don't want to. It's not because I don't know what it is. And I still like running humps. It's that you never know. You really never know what you're gonna have available to you. So on any given night, I can come on and say, hey, yeah, I like running this night, and come by and there's nothing in the receiving yard. Or I can come by and say, and it's like, okay, well, we need to trim this track and we need to trim that track. So you're not just humping, you're trimming. So now, you got to remove the power from this track. You got to remove the power from this. You got to do this. You got to do that. So there's always a lot of uncertainty as to what the job is going to be. A hump operator is a hump operator in real life. He goes out there. He basically, I mean, I'm no expert on the prototype, but if I was to say you're a trim crew, well then I know what I'm doing. If I was to say you're the yard master, I would know what to do. If I was to say, okay, you're the hump crew, I would know what to do. What's happened is because there's so many jacks of all trades and there's so much different variations depending upon. So what happens is so Southwest will run a session. It goes 3 hours. So 3 hours of time goes by. It's only 3 hours. Meanwhile, there's 2 days of real time that goes by, so you're still within those 3 hours. So yeah, you may have certain locals that you're accustomed to, but it takes you 2 weeks before you even get half a day. It takes you a full month before you get to. Did I say that right? 6. Yeah, it takes 4 weeks until you get through 24 hours of a simulated clock. That's if you run 2 3-hour sessions. So trying to get yourself into a pattern of knowing what to expect and what jobs are available and who's, what demand's going to be, because it's first come, first serve, and who knows. I may like a certain local and say, hey, yeah, I want to run this local, but it's not like I'm going to come home from a Monday night and there's that local ready, because I know it runs at 5:30 p.m. at night. It's perfect timing. I don't know it's going to be there. That's the challenge for me, is because as much as I love a big multiplayer feel, and as much as I am open to different positions, it's that uncertainty. It's that not knowing what I'm going to be doing. Sometimes it's cool. I like the variety. One of my job interviews, or whatever the hell, well, not job evaluations once, or somebody who was doing a letter recommendation or something for me said, I love routines, but I also like variety of tasks. So in other words, I'm okay with variety of tasks. I just want to make sure that the variety of tasks are stuff that's routine, that I understand or that I enjoy. And there is so many variables when you're going through a 24-hour day that you get to one side of the 24-hour clock. The only local jobs you may have is pulling power off of intermodal tracks and setting up cars. Some of it's really boring stuff, some of it's cool, and it's like, well, it's all for the good of the community or good of the group or whatever the case may be. It's just, unfortunately, it grows tiring sometimes, at least for me. That's just the way I look at it. That's why I say smaller is better, not so much bigger. As much as I love the traffic flows and the challenge of dispatching, I do like the challenge of dispatching a realistic traffic flow. What I don't like is having to control everything here except this part. So what I do on a typical night, on a Monday and Wednesday, I control this section, that section, that section, and that section. I don't control this. I don't control that. I only go up to Mineola, I believe it is, whatever. I don't even think I control Mineola, so I control Daggett. I control the Cajon sub up to baseline, so I control all that, and I only have to control signals going that way. I don't have to control the rest of the UP Mojave sub. I have to control this entire area, including Daggett. I don't do anything with the yards except if there's no yard master available. So there's a lot of added stuff. I don't have to touch any of that. That's not my territory. But there's a lot of added stuff. And what happens to me is, a lot of times, is I will get caught up in a screen because I don't know, what's running or what's going on. So anyways, that's California. Looking at California now, California being the default route, it's easy for people to get involved in that. I would personally be okay with California if I was to take a yard like Barstow and run it, and I'd be fine with that. But I also like dispatching too. I can see myself getting pretty bored with just running the hump all the time, if that makes sense. You know, it's okay, but, you know, and it's relaxing, it's fun, but it's not my number one. My number one interest is dispatching. And you can say, well, yeah, but you got your dispatcher fix on Mondays and Wednesdays. Maybe you can do something else on the Tuesday. And that's possible, maybe. So maybe that's a possibility where I can jump in and be a hump operator while somebody like Scott maybe trims. So I kind of I threw that idea out there. It's a possibility. But that's where you're adding in that second person. I think the second person makes a difference, because now you might be doing the hump, or maybe you'll run some power into or whatever, but you're not handling the switching so much. I don't mind trimming. It's just trimming is, how would you say? Humping is something that is rather relaxing, yet you got to know what you're doing, and you have to be paying attention to what's going on to some extent. But it's rather relaxing. You can do other things, and especially it's capable of multitasking, and I'll get into that in a moment. And there is a really good potential for multitasking that I'll get into in a moment, but it's possible. But working with somebody who's actually dealing with the trim end, now that right there makes that even more, because what happens is when you come into the hump, you never know. There might be a lot of trimming and cleaning up. It's kind of like you want to play, but then you have to clean up after yourself, or I guess that's the best analogy I can think of. And then you gotta make sure you get the right amount of power over into the departure yard. So you're not the hump operator. You're the jack of all trades of Barstow is what's happening. And if you like to be jack of all trades, and you like all aspects of operations, whether it be switching or running a mainline train or doing whatever is necessary, that's fine. But what happens is, if you're going to do all that and you're single player, at least for me personally, if you like to do it all as prototypically as possible, it becomes a lonely place real quick. Even, single player definitely becomes a lonely place. When I was running a 24/7 server, it used to be a lonely place. I never liked running a train by myself down here and not having anybody else on. This was before AI. I remember that. I remember how great it was when AI came along. It was such a big improvement from version 1 to version 2. But Scott was saying how much he missed what we used to do in version 1. I can see his point to a certain extent, but for me personally, yeah, there was more. You needed more, but a lot of people can do what they want to do just in single player, because all they cared about is just seeing a few trains going by. They just wanted the eye candy, I guess, or the real, whatever. Everybody likes different things, so it really doesn't matter. But that's one way of doing it. I'm trying to think of any other secondary positions that I would like. Just trying to think of some of the yards. A little bit of switching of the yards, maybe. Building of trains, yeah, maybe. I've done it in the past. I don't mind doing it. I don't mind even running certain locals, to be quite honest. The odd local here and there, but ideally, I don't tend to focus on those. I don't mind doing it. I've done it in the past, and there's times where I actually enjoy it. There's certain locals I like. Switching puzzles. I mean, I know even in the Model Railroad Club, how many times that I'd like to, be out there. I loved being the yardmaster, actually. I enjoyed being a yardmaster. Yardmasters, or even a yard crew. I liked. It wasn't my favorite position, but I did like it. I liked being the operator at Romford for example. I love that position. That was basically directing traffic in and out of the hump bowl and controlling dispatching for a small section. So you were a bit of a jack of all trade, but you basically I controlled the not the hump tracks, the staging yard. So there was like 6-track staging yards, so I controlled some of the electric switches and everything getting set up going into a staging yard, and I controlled a Y, similar just to a basic Y like this, where I controlled traffic going around. I had one main line going this way and one going that, and I controlled the switches at that Y. And plus I would give clearances to trains that were going through it based on the switches I was setting up. So that was why I was called a Romford operator. This area would be called Romford. And of course the one line actually went to the staging yard, whereas everything else went to the rest of the layout. So I enjoyed that position. It was a fun position. I also liked being the dispatcher of a different sub. So we had that position, and you had to do a bit of dispatching, but there was another dispatcher on another subdivision, like say this one or whatever, that was a small single track section where we would give track warrant dispatching, which was fun. I enjoyed doing that, and we'd have a few crews, so there was a lot of those things, and there was times where I just liked running a crew. But the thing was, when I was running a crew, trains weren't just passing me that were just what I'd see. Everything had a purpose. So I find it's very easy in a high capacity railroad where trains just keep by, especially when you're on these double track and triple track sections. Trains are just coming by you one after one after one, and you're just getting a bunch of green signals. It becomes just white noise for me. It just becomes it's kind of like hearing, if you have the scanner feature on your thing, and you're hearing whatever his name, George or whatever the hell's his name is, complaining about something, and I forget. There used to be a joke about it because they play the same soundtrack, and this guy would come on, and this was when, if you had back in the day, I used to have it on. It was funny, but it just became part of the white noise in the background. It was just another thing that was supposed to make it feel authentic and real, but it then just became, it's moving eye candy is what it is. Nothing more. And just seeing, how many times you can see the same freaking engines in cars, and there's no purpose. I like it where I'm running, I'm not too sure what signal I'm going to get. I'm not too sure if my trains, if I'm a slower train, if I'm going to be on double track and somebody faster, like an intermodal service, is suddenly going to overtake me on the left track and pass me by. Those are the kind of things, or why I'm being held up or thrown into, like if I'm here, all of a sudden I'm thrown into left track because there's a fast intermodal coming down, and I gotta stop here at Pisgah while somebody else goes by fast, and then I get routed in behind them. Or maybe I have to wait for two, or one's coming up looking me right in the eyes, and he's a manifest as well, but I'm just here because they're trying to regulate the traffic. Those are the kind of situations I like. So if I'm running a train, one, I like dispatching those situations. Two, I like being in the the cab of those situations, because now I have not only the challenge of running the route, which I've run many times before, honking at the same crossings, seeing the same scenery, basically seeing different times of day, different weather, blah blah blah. Same old. But now I have the variability. Like I said before, I like routine things, but I like variety of tasks. And seeing that, hey, I'm going into this siding today. Oh, what's going on here? Okay. Oh, they're throwing me at Pisgah. Why is that? Those are the cool things that I like about railroading. You know what I'm saying? So that's California. Of course, we got 3 routes with there's not really too much else you can do. Hold on a second. Let me go a little bit further. Needles, I really don't know. For me personally, I don't know what else you can do with needles other than run trains. Yes, you can dispatch needles. Try to spawn a train out of here. Like I said, you can actually spawn a train out of Lenwood if you wanted to. In theory, that's one thing you can do. If you want to run the hump at Barstow, you could, in theory, set up a track somewhere. I'm not too sure where, but you could set up a left-hand running movement fleeted through here. I wouldn't bother with UP, but you could if you wanted. It's just another technical thing you have to deal with. But you can run, not a left-handed running movement. What am I talking about? A right-handed running movement. So you run your right-handed running. I was just doing that because I forgot I crossed them over. So you run right-hand running on on main 2 here, and then you just basically fleet everything going through Barstow. But what you can do is then you could do the same thing with needles. The thing here is you get the spawn. You will get the spawn points at needles, because yes, a lot of people have Seligman sub. I don't. But the cool thing about that is I have the spawn points at needles, so I can spawn trains at needles. So now you're running needles. Problem with needles is, okay, let me see. First of all, let's talk about industries. The kid is local. That's it. So you've got the kid is local. You can simulate Barstow traffic. It's a tough one, because you have the ability to bring everything in. You can run on any inbound track, but you would have to spawn everything at Lenwood. And if you had a manifest train, number one, I wouldn't put manifest on the automatic spawning. I would manually spawn those trains in. I'm not saying you have to go for the spawn menu, but what you would do in that case is, so for Lenwood, for example, if you were to go over to Lenwood and you have the train types under mixed freight, like you would set up all these for the various trains, like international containers, intermodal, all the other stuff that you would normally see. What you would do in the probability for mixed freight is you keep it at 0. From there, you'd go in. That ain't going to say nothing. Of course, these ones aren't going to say anything because they're not. See, I have a test in there. But if I was to do needles, for example, you see I have all these probabilities. So I would go into my mixed freight, and then I could pull up all these Barstow bound trains. So out of needles, for example, if I'm ready to bring in Tall Bar 1, I just basically highlight on this and spawn. It's going to tag everything for industries, and you're going to be all set. Of course, you're going to have to do some configuration, but that's okay. Everything's fine with that. Configuration's fine. So from a local standpoint, yeah, you could run that. If you start going beyond that, though, now you're dealing with, yeah, you could run the locals. If you really want to run locals, you could run the boron local as well. But then you're onto different screens. So now suddenly you're playing around with the BNSF side of, which is fine. This isn't too bad. Except now, to get a train to spawn out of here, you got to go all the way to Bakersfield. So, if you're actually going to spawn the realistic traffic for everything, now you're not managing Needles, you're managing Mojave. So that traffic load on just the basic routes is quite a bit. So you see what I mean? Because they've included Needles, which is gracious of them, but the problem is now you, as single player, if you're trying to do everything yourself, it's going to be difficult to do everything. You have to you have to pick and choose, or you just have to do. You're not going to get realistic levels, not with one player, and that's the thing about that. I mean, it's doable on certain routes. Now, LA, well, first of all, let's take a look at West Colton for a second. West Colton has a couple of, you got Oro Grande, you got Victorville, you've got some industries up here, you've also got the industries in and around San Bernardino, the intermodal facilities. So there's a lot of possibility here, as well as UP Yard. I already mentioned about you can run trains this way if you just wanted to run that yard. You could, in theory, run the map. The problem with Lenwood is you don't have a spawn point. What you can do to facilitate that is you can set up the spawn point to be Yermo and have both BNSF and UP trains run down here through Lenwood, fleet them in. So it's not too far away. You fleet them in, they take a little ways to get there, they keep running, and eventually they will appear on your territory. So that's okay, you can do that. On the other side, you do have a spawn point here, you have spawn points everywhere. So in reality, what you could do is you could run West Colton. But like I said before, running West Colton is one of the tougher jobs to do because you have to really pay attention to what you're doing in the hump. That doesn't mean you're always looking at the screen, as I said before. The other thing you got to keep in mind is you are dealing with a fairly external dispatcher is out of the question. You're not going to be able to use external dispatcher if you want to be multitasking. So in theory, yeah, you can probably do quite a bit in single player if you have West Colton. Seligman, I can't answer. I don't know what's involved with Seligman. LA is a smorgasbord of industries. You can divide it up and do all kinds of crazy things. As far as spawn points go, and this is a custom screen that Scott made, by the way. You can have the Alameda Corridor spawn. I believe there's spawn points here for stuff out that way. I can't remember if there's. I don't think there's a spawn point here. Once again, yeah, I'm just trying to think now. Is there a spawn point? I don't think so. Well, actually, no. I think there is. I could be wrong on that one, but I think there is. I think they've set it up so that because it's not technically connected to the basic route. Let me try on that. Let me try Riverside here. I'm pretty sure Riverside has a spawn point. And indeed it does. And yeah, and we had it set up. I remember doing the LA project or whatever the hell it was that I was trying. One of the other projects that I tried. So yeah, you can spawn trains out of Riverside. There's a lot of things you can do here. I mean, dispatch a little bit, run a little things here, there, whether you're dealing with double track for the most part, which is fairly easy to dispatch, although if you want to do it in realistic manners, I mean, you want to pay attention and actually use the crossovers. That's what they're there for, to do overtakes and, race a few trains, etc. But this is a heavily involved. There's so much here. I wouldn't even know where to begin for single player. For dual, it's possible, but I mean, for two players, I mean, yeah, you can have somebody dispatching and somebody, perhaps somebody dispatching and somebody setting up. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities, to be honest. It is, there's, if you like switching, you're gonna like this, no doubt about it. But Mojave alone, without the use of Barstow, is probably one of the easier little tricks. It's just that you're not going to have the ability to use the hump just by using this. It is pretty good though. At least you can get some of the traffic flow. You can do the dispatching. One person can do dispatching and probably a little bit of yardmaster work, a little bit of bringing in manifest trains, and you know, you can easily have somebody spawn, you know, custom trains at various times or various locations, no problem. This is certainly doable on its own. This would be a territory I would, you know, but yeah, you don't even have to, you know, you can have an addition, like I said before, you can spawn and use this and run the UP trains off and all the other stuff. So I mean, this is very doable. There's a lot of industries in this area. Now, as far as single player goes, like I said before, if you run a train out of Bakersfield, it's doable, but the best trains, if you're going to dispatch, put it this way, if you're going to do single player, the best trains to do it are the locals. So you're going to have to like to do locals or switching or whatever. And the reason why is because you don't need 100% attention on either at any given time. So you could be doing a little bit of switching, you do a couple runs, do a set off there, then you hit F3 and go back to the screen, set up your lines, and go back to it. Now I can demonstrate that, but I'm not big on switching. I don't mind doing it. It's you know, it's just one of those things where I don't feel the need to do it anymore. I don't know. Not by yourself, it gets really boring quick. And the problem with here's the thing for me, and this is my perspective. Now, some of you might be different and you like switching, and if you like switching, then you'll be okay. If you like dispatching, you should be fine, I suppose. The problem with the interface, though, is I'm not too big on the F3 interface, and the external dispatcher is okay as well, but it's limited as well. So, the dispatcher interface, I mean, you gain some, you lose some. You can do a little bit of multitasking, but really, that's not the point of multitasking. Isn't for just being able to do more. It's so yeah, I suppose the point is to do more, but it's to actually be able to operate and get the things you want out of whatever route you're running. So that's about California. I can't do any more about California. Let's see about some of the other routes. It's 10:05 already. Wow. Let's see what other routes we've got here. The southeast, you've got one hell of a huge hump. The problem with that hump is, where are we here? It's been a while since I've been on this. I love this route too. I really do. There's a lot of these routes I love. I miss running on this. I miss running in the northeast. We'll get to the northeast in a moment here. Where are we got? Are we at the No, that's the Jacksonville ramp. Rice Yard forwarding. Rice Yard Bull. Okay. Well, we'll go here. Let's check this out. I don't know if I have the... I imagine I have the latest updates. Problem was I had a backup copy, so I don't know if I have all the latest of everything. But that's okay. I mean, I have, you know, all the legitimate downloads. This bowl is awesome. I love running. I loved running it. Unfortunately, it didn't love me. And what I mean by that is I think it was taxing on my system. Now, they even say, you know, if you start filling up the bowl tracks or whatever, you know, things are going to happen. Well, we know that, but the whole point of having a bowl is to not fill up every track. You don't want to fill up every track by capacity, but you want to be able to sort things, and that's what a bowl this size is for. It's not to fill up every track. But you know, if you're not going to do it, that's the only thing you're going to do it for, okay? So yeah, I enjoyed doing this. The problem, in addition to it taxing, is these missorts that started happening, and they happened to me at Barstow as well. As far as I know, there hasn't been a fix, and I know he doesn't. In reality, you're not supposed to be able to go in there and manually throw any of these, but there's never been a fix that I know of to be able to do anything with these switch machines to get in there and snag a car. Like if you knew something and you're humping, and all of a sudden the hump controller shows an error, you could stop a car, and I would be able to stop a car anywhere. The problem was it's gone. You either delete the car or you let it go, and then you let the trim figure it out. And maybe that's good enough. I don't know. Of course, you've only got one. You only get one of these two tracks available. Which one is it that's out? I know one of them has a permanent flag in here somewhere. Oh, that's the one. Okay. So you only get one of the two at this current version, which, you know, it is what it is. I was over at... oh, what the hell was I? The big one in Ohio. The big bowl and NS bowl. Why can't I? I'm horrible with memory and names and all this other stuff. It's not Fostoria. It's oh yeah, Bellevue. I was at Bellevue, and there's a they have a double bowl. Toronto has one too. Backyard CN Toronto has a double not a double bowl, a double hump, and it was really cool to see. And I've seen North Platte as well. I think North Platte's got to have a double as well. I'm pretty sure. But it was really neat seeing them line up, because the one was finishing up, and then you could see the other one was coming. And I didn't really get to view too much, but there was a highway overpass just outside of Bellevue, and it was pretty cool, because it was actually very close, almost about this close to the ladder, and you could see. You could either be along the like the side road, say, was over here. There's like a farmer's field, and you can actually see the hump operating. It was really cool from just across a farm, and there was even a house by a pond that had a nice view as well. It was really cool. Now the highway unfortunately didn't have a sidewalk. It was kind of outside of the city, so. But it was neat seeing it. I mean, I didn't hang around too much. I hung out more within the city of Bellevue, or the town of Bellevue, or city of Bellevue, I guess, by all the interlockings and everything. So that's where all the action is. But still, it was nice to see it. It was really cool. Anyways, I don't know why I got onto that subject. The last project that I did was in this area was Sanford Sub, and the way I did it before was I could spawn trains out of Stanton. You can even spawn intermodals out of Taft, and well, you could spawn trains out of. There's spawn points here in Jacksonville. There's even, I don't know about NS. I can't remember. Could you spawn NS? No, I'm thinking of RTS. You could spawn off one of the mains or something like that. I can't remember what track, but there is in an area that you can spawn out of Jacksonville Terminal going that way. You can even spawn the NS train, which you don't need to do it, obviously, but you can spawn the Jacksonville ramp. I don't think there was anything else that way. But anyways, the whole idea was just to have this section. Now, the cool thing about there's the pros and cons for Sanford Sub, at least for me. And I'm not talking about the development. I'm not talking about the beauty of the route. The route's great. It's prototypical. It's awesome. What I did with Sanford Sub was I operated it prototypically. I didn't protolance it, although you could, in theory, protolance this. There's a lot of yards. There's little tricks you can do to get the yards to auto retag. So there's neat things that you can do with intermediate yards. That's another one that's in LA too. There's a lot of intermediate yards in LA that you can also use the same technique. So if you don't want to switch all the industries, you can still run a train, do its set-offs. It will set the tags around and act as though one of the biggest things, and it's prototypical, but it's a pain in the butt, and it probably wouldn't have lasted the life of this rail driver, is the horns. The number of horn crossings on this route is crazy. It's just you're constantly this horn is a lot looser now. I can tell it's, you know, and that's one of the culprits would probably be this route. I mean, I used it quite a bit for a little while there, and it was crazy. Of course, the highlight has always been Folkestone. Unfortunately, when I highlighted myself for Sanford, I didn't bother with that. And of course, Waycross, I didn't bother with that as much. I was still stuck with Sanford because that was the one thing. If I was going to do Waycross, well then, what are the spawn points? What do we got for? Oh boy, it's been a while. Just trying to remember where everything is. I'm not even gonna bother trying to remember where everything is here. Yeah, you could spawn. I mean, you could run. I'm just trying to remember if it's been a while since I've run Rice Yard too. You can multitask. I forget if it's an uphill. Matter of fact, I can't even remember. You know, I'm pretty certain the next one, but I mean, this is certainly doable. It's still much smaller. They are expanding. I know that. So this is going to expand to another route, which you may or may not want to incorporate into your system. Which, I mean, who knows? Maybe it'll have different industries, different operations, different feel. Hard to say. But as far as spawn points go, I can't remember. I think North Ludowiski has one for sure. Fitzgerald has one. The Thomasville has one. So all these have spawn points coming in. I'm not too sure if Barganza has one. I doubt it. Let's take a look here. Bolin, no, Brunswick. Well, Brunswick, yeah, okay. Callahan, that's the other way. Ludowiski Manor's another one. No. So, if you're going to spawn something that's coming from that way, you're SOL, I think. Because there's no way you can just run this. This is what I was thinking of, and I don't even think there's one at Nahanta. No. So you're limited to what you can spawn. Again, most people don't think of that way. When they see an expansion, they're looking to expand their world. A lot of people are looking to expand their worlds even further. The problem with that is if you're wanting to operate it and you're single player and you want to operate it as prototypically as possible, well, guess what? You need manpower because you need people to dispatch, you need people to do those jobs. It just doesn't occur automatically. Give me a chance to do an external dispatcher, and you know, I can put an AI dispatcher in there. I've already said I can do that. That's not a problem. But since I can't, or since I don't have the ability to, or the means to connect to it right now, I'm not going to worry about it. So yeah, I love this route. Unfortunately, the only feasible option that I've ever come up with here is Sanford Sub. And Sanford is a long line. I don't know if I have the mileage there. I guess not, but I know it takes a while to get through there. That is a long stretch. So running the main lines, it's an okay stretch to dispatch. It's limited to the number of trains. So Sanford Sub is certainly doable. I don't mind dispatching it. It's not too bad, but it gets kind of boring, actually, to be quite honest. Because when you're on Sanford, I mean, if you're running, you don't have to run the prototypical. You can run more traffic if you want to, but it can get boring to dispatch this route at prototypical levels. This is why I envisioned running Sanford as a single player operation, because I could dispatch it myself. I could spawn the trains that I wanted, plus I could run the trains. The problem with running the trains is you're going to have to run all the locals, or you're going to have the manifest do something. I mean, like I said, it's doable, but then, you know, do you want to run a train from end to end? You can if you want to. Like I said before, if I'm going to run, I'm going to want to have a dispatcher. That's just the way it is. And if I don't have a dispatcher, I'm not going to want to run the main lines. And switching, I don't mind. It's the same thing. If I'm going to run switching, I don't mind running switching, but I want to see mainline trains around me. I want to get out of the way of them. I want to, and it's kind of odd because there I want to see the eye candy, but as far as just running a train, I could care less about just seeing eye candy. It's not the eye candy, it's the operation. It's the fact that I'm being dispatched, that I'm being held at sidings, that I'm if I'm a faster train, that I'm overtaking trains, or if I'm a more priority train, that I'm overtaking trains, or if I'm just meeting trains, that's fine too. But it's that not knowing, that's the part of not knowing that I like. So those kind of things, because they're all easy, you just basically follow the signals. That's all there is to it. But it's that variation in operational flexibility that makes it interesting. When it gets to, well, what trains are available or what locals are available, and, well, you're at this time of day and you really only have so many locals available, suddenly you don't really have that many options. You either run that local or you don't do anything. So, yeah, it's hard. It's, you know, you can't be there 24/7 a day. So I mean, to have the train do itself and whatever. This is why I say small territories are better. This is about the closest you're going to get to a small territory, but this is by no means a small territory. There's a lot of local switching involved, especially in the Taft area, as well as Jacksonville, if you were to go that far. But I don't think I was modeling that. I don't think I even modeled Jacksonville Yard. I think I just spawned everything and I just ran Sanford Sub as one, so that's doable. Anyways, that's that one. Finally, we go into we go back into Selkirk, and I've always revisited this. What is that? Test car? I don't even know what the hell that's kind of weird. I gotta save world as test car, just for, you know what. Let me take a look at that. I don't know what that is. That's interesting. I must have had something. Yeah, that's cool. So again, these are custom screens that this is Scott's favorite line. I told Scott, I said, I guess he likes, he's doing the latest, although he's grown tired of Run8 just like I have, and it's just, you know, trying to find what you want the way you want it, I guess. There's only you get 3 routes. There's only so much you can do. Despite the fact that there's plenty of industries and all that other stuff. This is his favorite route out of all 3. He loves running the Northeast the most. He had a server running up on there. Granted, I never joined it, and I think I came on once just to talk with him. But he's got everything labeled for his coding that he was using, which is really cool, and I like, because he had an idea. So I told him, I said the other day, or I think it was just tonight actually, because this is when we first started sending emails back and forth. I said, I can run this hump and dispatch this. Now, do I need to run... actually, let me rephrase that. Despite the fact that Mohawk is there, ideally, if I was, and I think this is one of the projects I did do actually, I would dispatch Selkirk, because I don't want to be playing around with screens too much. So basically what happens is, if I'm over at Selkirk, right? First of all, one thing that Mikey did is, Mikey, out of all 3 of the routes, he has the most spawn points of any of them. And he's followed the channel many times. I don't know if he still does, because, you know, I think he was very interested in what I could do to promote the route as much as possible. Hopefully he still does follow the channel. I mean, this has always been one of my... Here's the thing, okay? It is one of my favorite routes, but it's also one of the, how would you say, boring to run a mainline train on, and it's not. It has nothing to do with it. It's designed the way it is. This is closest to me. This is the Northeast. I live in the Northeast technically. I live. When you look at mileage here, I'm just trying to think here how far away I am. I've never been to Selkirk. I have, however, I have been on the Maple Leaf, which runs through St. Catharines, where I live, and, you know, I've gone through Albany, I've gone through along the Hudson, I've gone through Syracuse, I've gone through this whole section, that's for damn sure. I mean, when you look at the mileages here, I'm not too sure. Well, they go the other way. You know, that's when you're getting into, from, you know, eastern, you're heading into, you're not too far from Western New York. Western New York is just across the border from Southern Ontario. And when I work each day, I work 15 minutes away from where I am right now, where I live. It's actually gonna, when I move, it's actually gonna go up to close to 30 minutes, unfortunately, but because I'll be on the opposite side of town. Right now I'm close to the major highway, the QEW, that runs through here, and it's very easy for me to get on the highway in the morning. Where I'm moving to, where I used to live, basically, I am going to be on the other side of town, and away from the city, into the almost the outskirts of town, basically. Not the outskirts, but the suburban area. So I'm kind of away from the highway. I'm away from most of the malls, in a residential area that actually used to be very close to the farms. So let's just say right now I'm 15 minutes away from work, okay? Which is basically Niagara Falls, Ontario. Niagara Falls, Ontario is the Niagara River, which is the international border. Niagara Falls, New York is just across. The Maple Leaf crosses there. It crosses at Niagara Falls, and it heads from Toronto, crosses through where I live in St. Catharines, crosses Niagara Falls, It leaves, I think, at 9 o'clock in the morning, gets to New York at 9 o'clock at night. So it's a 12-hour trip, I think. And they do a crew change. They do a crew change in. They do a crew change. Whoa, that's cool. Trains are spawning. I didn't expect that. I'm like, what? Forgot I had the AIs on. So yeah, they have the crew change in Albany. They have a crew change at the international border. So VIA operates it in Canada, the Maple Leaf, and then you have crew change in Albany, and then you go to New York. So this is very close to me, so I'm familiar with this line. I'm familiar with the basically what they call the Chicago line of the old New York Central system, which runs through Syracuse. Now, if I was to operate this, and how I've operated it before, I generally like to run the hump, and the way I would do it, of course, is at the same time, because you're running the hump, you're also running, you're dispatching this section. Traffic is not huge. There is a you know, an okay amount of traffic. Locals, and this is the basic. We're not even talking the Mohawk sub. I just ran Selkirk. I think the last project I did was Selkirk. So everything here, there's plenty of industries. So there's a lot to do. You had the Amtrak operations that was available. So you had all kinds of different things that you could run. But in running the hump at Selkirk, and I'm trying to remember the grade. It's been a while. So yeah, it goes up. It's not like UP or the West Colton. So yeah, you're going up on a steady grade here, and then you have access to. I thought there was issues with some of the tracks. I think it got resolved though. I thought there was some issues, but see, you got access to play around with these switches. So if something gets inadvertently humped or whatever, you have access to change those. I'd love to see a full-size Selkirk or a full-size Barstow for that matter, but the other cool thing about operating here is you do actually get to see the eye candy that goes by. So if you're dispatching the line, you're also seeing the trains go by. So I always like that. So I got to dispatch this, I got to operate the hump, and I got to see trains going by. So it was you know, it's a position that I enjoy. Now I do remember, if I recall correctly, there was a time though where I wanted to run some locals. So I didn't always want to do it, but there was times where I did want to run some locals. I didn't want to be always stuck doing this, if I recall. I can't say for certain. My memory's not always the greatest, but I know being stuck just doing this was not always necessarily, you know, I don't know, optimal. Because I think with this here, well, I shouldn't say that. The reason I think why the humping part and the dispatching part was okay, although the dispatching part is fairly boring. The problem with this, and I do remember now that I think about it, is that you have the classification yard, then you have to deal with the trim. Dealing with the trim is the tough part. So once again, if I'm humping, I don't want to be dealing with the trim. If I'm gonna, you know, and I don't mind playing, I don't mind doing teamwork too. It's not about what I want. It's what I'm saying, basically what I favor. So yeah, from single player, this is very doable. It's doable in many ways, because if you're just, you know, and not getting Mohawk, just get Selkirk. I'm not saying you can get Mohawk too if you want. That just gives you added more. You can get all the routes. You can do whatever you want. But starting with one route, Like I said, running the main lines, it's fairly boring, but it is beautiful in some ways. There's a lot of I think it is probably one of the more beautiful routes because there's a lot of you get a lot of water here, you get a lot of interesting scenic areas. So it's certainly doable. Now, as I said before, if, like, for example, I'll use Scott for an example, and Scott's probably watching this. Perhaps, I told him I was going to be doing this live stream later on, anyways. So, what he likes running locals, let's say, or he has more, say, time during the week or whatever, let's say. Because, I gotta work Monday to Fridays or whatever, and if I'm still running Mondays and Wednesdays, if I'm still dispatching on the Southwest, we'll wait and see how it goes. I'm hoping for a few moderate changes, but it's up to the guys, and I want to try this out. I want to give this a try too, and kind of try to find myself and see what it is. I still want to do the dispatching side of things now. But if I find this more appealing, I may be interested in doing it. I know Scott, he's for him, it's not working for him. And I'm talking in regards like for Southwest. That's what he was saying to me, anyways. I mean, it does, but he's been on a couple times, but for him, it's not working. It's got nothing to do with the guys of the Southwest. I mean, honestly, I love the guys at the Southeast server too. Unfortunately, haven't got to run with them for a long time, and it's only because they run in a different way. They really don't run with the dispatcher. They really don't run dispatch sessions of any type, and they do have people who could dispatch, or they have different things, but they run in a totally different way. They're totally operations minded in regards to local operations, making sure that car forwarding is the number one thing. And yeah, you can run a train anytime you want, but chances are, unless you get a crew, you may or may not have a dispatcher. It's very similar. I imagine it's similar, although when you get some of the bigger servers, I'm sure they have a lot of dispatchers that are available. Whether or not you have close to 100% realistic operations is another thing. The whole point of doing this and going through this again is what we could really use in Run8, and I'll say it again, is a smaller region. Something that is, and I hear it's coming, and maybe it's coming sooner, maybe it's coming for version 3, I'm not sure. If it's just something that's version 3 compatible, I don't know if I'll buy into it, personally. It's going to take an interesting thing to sell me on version 3 as far as I'm concerned. I love the idea of movable bridges, but is it worth, turntables and all that other stuff? I don't know if, and who knows, there's other things that might come too, but I mean, for me, like I said before, on Sundays, I'll come around and I've already talked about TD3, and I've already talked about my plans for stuff in the fall. And those things are still doable. What happens with me, as I said before, on Sundays. On a Sunday, I have a lot of time, and I have some time coming up. I got the whole week of Christmas off. As far as I know, my son's going to be away part of that, which kind of sucks. It's good that I have the week off, but it kind of sucks that I may or may not see him as much as I would like. And that's okay. I mean, it gives me more time to move. The fact that I have time to decompress, at first it might hit me and it's like, this sucks. Or I might get to see him before Christmas, so I might get some time before him, and then, then I'll have to decompress and come to the realization that, hey, it's just me. Now what am I going to do with myself? I kept myself busy tonight. I mean, and it's fine, and I'm sure I'll keep myself busy tomorrow night one way or another. And we'll see what happens. Like Scott and I, we'll see what we come up with or whatever he wants to go with. And ultimately, it's probably going to be something he runs. However he wants to run it is fine by me. I'll be okay with it, and I'll try. And like I said, I'm willing to try different ideas. I'm willing to try ideas that other people have as well. Unfortunately, I don't think I'll be hosting, because I've gone through that, and I don't want to bring people in on. I don't want to get people into something and it's basically realize it ain't for me and then have to change my mind. I've done that before. I don't like having to quit or give up on something, but unfortunately it's going to be trial and error, and ultimately if it's my server, then it's going to be up to me. Whereas if it's somebody else's server, that's a different thing. Now for Scott, say for example, Scott's had a server, he's tried to get people to come in and do whatever. I'm willing, and he's trying to do some of the single player things himself. And what I'm saying is I'm willing to hump if he's willing to help me out to trim. I'm certainly willing to dispatch as well. And the trim operation may not be a full-time thing, nor with the hump necessarily, depending upon what work has to be done. But what that does is that gives with two people now suddenly, provided that's, and he gets all the he gets to get the third thing that I like the most, and that is running trains under dispatch conditions, because now he doesn't have to worry about looking at the board, he just has to worry about operating the train. I actually enjoy doing that. I just don't like doing it in just double track and, may or may not see. And I don't think he likes running main lines as much too, if I'm not mistaken. He's not so much for running main lines. He wants more of the purposeful operations. So the cool thing about this is you can spawn in Amsterdam. You have spawn points here. Wherever. I don't think CP has spawn points, but that's okay. It's not the end of the world. I'm just trying to think of some of the others. So you have all the industries here, all the industry informations on his displays as well. I like Mohawk too. Mohawk is a really cool route, but again, it's once you start getting into this, then you start getting into, you're expanding your operations, but at the same time you're complicating your dispatching. So if I was to hump, I don't know if I don't think I've ever tried to hump and dispatch both sections. I don't know where that one came out of. Okay, so see, this one spawned over here. I think I last had it set up to do Selkirk, so the trains set themselves up, they run their course, do their thing, whatever, and then so I don't know what system Scott's got set up for this. If he's probably got both of them in there, but that's just me. That's how I want to do things. I just wanted to throw that out there. That's how I would do things. But then again, it's not going to be my server, and I don't think I'm not going to put myself out there for it. The reason why it would be very easy for me to just go ahead and say, well, wait a minute, Sean, you're talking about TD3 the other day. You were talking about doing a dispatcher software. Here's the difference, and I've said this before too. I don't like to program. I do it because I want to get something out of it. So I've already talked about the weaknesses of external dispatcher, and I've talked about the weaknesses of TD3. I've also talked about the strengths of both of them. I want to get something that is better than both of them. And no, I'm not worried about the Run8 side of it. I just want to get something that makes dispatching the ultimate experience for me. If I can get that, even though I was just watching last Monday and I was watching the screens, that wasn't what I call an ultimate dispatching experience. That was quite stressful, quite frankly. And some dispatchers will come across those from time to time. I'm finding I'm getting more of them, and I don't want that. So I've already put the call out on the Southwest Forum. I've said, I've said my piece. I've said, this is how I'm feeling. And for now, I'll continue to dispatch if necessary, but we'll see how things go. If things may settle, and maybe it was just a bad week and there was just a lot of congestion and the random number thingamajiggy decided to go cuckoo and caused a lot of congestion on my section of the line. I don't know. Maybe other areas were not as... I mean, there's even flows and all that other stuff, so it's not a big deal. But I found I didn't get to really... I'm finding that I'm getting more of that. And we're already dispatching too much. So, like I said, as far as dispatching goes, I'm not programming for anybody but myself at this point. I'm not programming for the money. I'm not programming for the community. I'm programming for me. If I'm able to bring people along and be able to get a product that's viable, I think there's a market for it. I don't need the money that bad anymore, so I'm in a situation where I'm not doing it for the money now. So yeah, I still want to do it, but is it priority on me? No, because if it was, I'd do it. And the reason why I have the time Sundays. Somebody was like, well, you got all this time Sunday and you feel down, why don't you just get programming? Well, guess what? I got to go back to work Monday. I don't feel like doing anything. I'm just down and miserable. But once I get my mind focused, if I'm watching YouTube or whatever, despite the fact that I'm watching YouTube with my kid most of the weekend. Oh, we got out today. It was a beautiful day, but no, watching YouTube, it's okay. It's different when you're watching YouTube with your son and it's stuff that he wants to see versus stuff that you want to see. So I get to see some of the things that I want to see that he'd find boring after he goes home. So that's not too bad. But yeah, it gets you through the night and all that stuff, and going on a live stream or whatever. And I'm in a pretty good mood tonight, so it's not too bad. And I think the stress might be over with the other stuff as of this week. I had an ongoing issue going on, but I got a truck going out tomorrow. It's not a big deal. It's coming from the West Coast, so it's going to take a while to get through, and then I think things are going to calm down this week, if I'm not mistaken. So I think this will finally be a least stressful week, but we'll see. So anyways, that's all I got to say for right now. It's 10:44. I'm going to end this now. And yeah, I still want to get the dispatcher project, and yeah, I still want to continue to have the RTS brand and some type of RTS system going. I know I put the RTS logo on the screen and whatever it was that Scott did for me a while back. I would love to be able to do that and all that, but I either want to be compensated somehow for it or be able to do something that really benefits myself, not just the entire community. It's got to be something that my heart's in, and it's got to be in a project or a platform that I believe in. And right now, Run8 is very stagnant. And I've said that before. I'm waiting to see what happens. I've harped on them before. I'm not going to harp on them tonight. We'll wait and see what they have to offer. But this is still hands down the best. I mean, Scott was looking at Train Sim World. He was talking to me about some of the things on it, and I'm thinking to myself, boy, am I glad I didn't get into that. Some of the things he was telling me, it was just like, okay, because I was looking at the Train Sim World editors, forget it. I'm not even going to touch Train Sim World with a 10-foot pole. I heard some good things about it recently, but no, I'm not touching Train Sim World at all. And it has nothing to do with physics. It has a lot to do with what Run8 has and what Train Sim World does not have. And there's nobody that has a lot of the things that Run8 has. It's, you know, unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. So Run8's got nothing to worry about as far as I'm concerned. If they keep on going, and hopefully their version 3 is going to be something that's going to shock me, because they've done it before, but I don't know. I haven't heard anything, and silence is deafening. Anyways, that's it. So enough of my rambling. So that's my ideas for single player and possible teamwork ideas. Anybody can come up with teamwork ideas, depending upon what you like to do. So there's a lot of potential. Having one person is very difficult in the routes that are provided, unless you are willing to make sacrifices and to operations and realistic traffic levels. Having a second person and limiting your scope will allow you to do a lot of the prototypical things, though. So, and having the proper route. This is probably one of the best routes to multitask in. It just doesn't give you, like I said, the route itself. Unfortunately, running trains. If you like running locals, if you like running locals, like running a hump yard, or like dispatching, this isn't a bad one. This is probably the best one out of all of them, I think. That'll give you that option, because the traffic flows are not as heavy, and you'll be able to do quite a bit. And I think this is, this is still like one of the beautiful, like, look at all the trees and everything around. This is, I mean, don't get me wrong, the southeast has it, but you get down over to the river and the Hudson and all that other stuff. There's a lot of really cool looking scenery, even though a lot of it is repeat scenery out of some of the stuff that was included in other routes. I mean, this is really cool stuff. So we'll see what happens, and I'll get into my emails and see what Scott has to say tonight. So Scott, if you're there, yeah, send me an email, let me know what you think. And those are my ideas. And if you guys have any ideas, if you guys are looking to join Scott and myself or whatever, you want to get together, or you have a particular, let me know. You can let me know on the YouTube. I'll post a message over on the RTS forums. It's pretty dead right now, but I will post a message there, just to say that, hey, I've been considering doing something. I don't know yet what I want to do, and we'll see where it takes us. But I don't want to commit to anything unless, I don't want to drag anybody around and then just have to give up on it. I hate starting something and then having to give up on it, just because it's not for me anymore. So anyways, that's it for now, guys. I'll talk to you later. Have a good one.